What if the same money that built one of history's most terrifying regimes also helped build an American political dynasty? What if the profits from steel forged into tanks for the Third Reich ended up in the pockets of Wall Street as most powerful men, long before the first shots of World War II were even fired? This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's the chilling, documented story of a fortune so vast and a network so sophisticated that it survived the fall of an empire it helped create. It is a story that forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Does money have a conscience, or is its only loyalty to itself? In the ashes of World War I, Germany was a nation on its knees. The Treaty of Versailles had shackled it with impossible debts. Hyperinflation had turned life savings into worthless paper, and the streets were a battleground between communists and far-right militias. For Germany's industrial titans, it was a nightmare. Factories were idle, workers were striking, and the specter of a Bolshevik revolution loomed over everything. One of these titans was Fritz Thyssen, the heir to a colossal steel empire. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a German patriot who watched his country's humiliation with a burning fury. He craved order, stability, and a return to German strength. And in the early 1920s, he found a voice that echoed his own frustrations. It belonged to a fiery, mesmerizing speaker at a rally in Munich, a man named Adolf Hitler. Thyssen didn't see a genocidal maniac. He saw a tool. He saw a man who promised to smash the communists, tear up the Versailles Treaty, and get Germany's furnaces roaring again. So he made a calculated investment. Thyssen began quietly funneling immense sums of money into the fledgling Nazi party. His donations paid for propaganda, organized rallies, and kept the party afloat during its lean years. He later admitted in his own memoir, titled I Paid Hitler, that his support was a tragic mistake born out of fear. But at the time, it was just business, a dark, cynical bet on a political strongman to protect his assets. But Thyssen was far too shrewd to bet everything on one man or one country. Even as he was bankrolling Germany's future dictator, he was building an international ghost network, a financial escape route designed to protect his family's fortune no matter what happened. The key to this network was secrecy and neutrality. Thyssen knew that keeping his assets inside Germany was a massive risk, so he moved the ownership of his most valuable holdings outside the country into a complex web of foreign companies. The crown jewel of this operation was a specially created entity in the neutral Netherlands, the Bank for Handel and Scheepvaart. On paper, it was a Dutch institution, subject to Dutch law. In reality, it was the private treasure chest of the Thyssen dynasty, a financial firewall that could move money across borders with near total invisibility. This wasn't just clever accounting, it was a revolutionary way of thinking about wealth. Thyssen was creating a structure where his money had no nationality. It wasn't German or Dutch, it was simply capital, fluid and untouchable, capable of weathering any political storm. While his German factories produced steel, his Dutch bank was busy moving the profits around the globe, investing in assets and currencies far beyond the reach of any German government, present or future. It was a machine built for one purpose, survival. And that machine had a pipeline that stretched far beyond Europe, leading directly to the financial capital of the world. And what happened next would intertwine the fate of this German industrialist with one of America's most powerful families. That pipeline from the Thyssen's Dutch Bank terminated in New York City at an institution called the Union Banking Corporation, or UBC. Located at the prestigious address of 39 Broadway, UBC was one of the key hubs for managing the Thyssen family's American assets. It handled foreign exchange, investments, and the movement of vast sums of money. And sitting on its board of directors, helping to manage this flow of capital, was a charismatic and ambitious Wall Street partner from the powerful firm Brown Brothers Harriman. His name was Prescott Bush, father to one future US president and grandfather to another. The connection was undeniable and is a matter of public record. Prescott Bush and his fellow directors at UBC were managing a financial entity that was intricately linked to Fritz Thyssen, the single most important industrialist financing the rise of the Nazi Party. Documents from the US National Archives confirm that the Thyssen-controlled Dutch bank was the primary owner of UBC. For years, as Hitler consolidated power and began his aggressive rearmament of Germany, the profits from that very rearmament were flowing through this transatlantic network, managed in part by a future American senator. It was a damn good business, but it created a moral paradox so profound that it's still debated to this day. This arrangement produced one of the most staggering ironies of the 20th century. The Thyssen Empire was, in effect, playing both sides of a coming global conflict before it even began. In Germany, Thyssen's United Steelworks was the backbone of Hitler's war machine. His factories churned out the steel for the tanks, battleships, and artillery that would soon terrorize Europe. The profits from these government contracts were astronomical. But instead of remaining in Germany, a significant portion of that wealth was funneled through the Dutch bank and into the Union Banking Corporation in New York. There, under the management of Prescott Bush and his partners, the money was reinvested in the American economy. It was the ultimate financial hedge. Thyssen was building Hitler's arsenal with one hand, while his other hand was moving the profits to safety in the very country that would eventually form the arsenal of democracy to defeat him. The money was insulated from the chaos it was helping to create. If Germany won the war, the Thyssen Empire would be at the heart of the new order. If Germany lost, the family's vast fortune would be safe and sound in American dollars, sheltered from Allied bombs and post-war reparations. It was a cold, brilliant, and utterly immoral strategy. But even the most brilliant strategies can fail when you make a deal with a monster. And for Fritz Thyssen, the monster was about to turn on its creator. By 1939, Fritz Thyssen realized his catastrophic mistake. The man he had seen as a tool for restoring German order was revealed to be an uncontrollable megalomaniac, bent on total war and brutal persecution. Thyssen, a devout Catholic, was horrified by the regime's attacks on the church. As a pragmatic industrialist, he was terrified by Hitler's reckless rush toward a war that he believed would destroy Germany all over again. The final straw was the invasion of Poland. Thyssen broke with the regime, publicly condemning the war. He had helped build the Third Reich, and now he was one of its most high-profile critics. He knew what this meant. He and his family fled to Switzerland, becoming exiles from the empire they had bankrolled. But there was no safe harbor. He was eventually captured by the Vichy French government, handed over to his old associates, and imprisoned by the Gestapo. The Kingmaker became a prisoner. He spent the rest of the war in various concentration camps, including Dachau. The ultimate irony was that while Fritz Thyssen sat in a cell, his steel factories, now fully under Nazi control, continued to operate at peak capacity, producing the weapons that prolonged the very war he had tried to prevent. The machine no longer needed its architect. But as Thyssen wasted away in prison, a crucial question remained unanswered. What had become of the sophisticated international financial network he had built? What happened to the money trail that led directly to Wall Street? When World War II ended in 1945, the world cried out for justice. The Nuremberg trials put the Nazi regime's political and military leaders on display, exposing their horrific crimes for all to see. Investigators began to follow the money, trying to untangle the complex web of industrial and financial collaboration that had made the war possible. Their trail inevitably led to the Union Banking Corporation. In October 1942, shortly after the US entered the war, the American government had seized UBC's assets under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The official records explicitly cited the bank's connections to Fritz Thyssen and the Nazi regime. For a moment, it seemed like there would be a real reckoning for the Wall Street firms that had handled enemy money. But the reckoning never came. After the war, the case was handled with a quiet efficiency that bordered on silence. Instead of a full-blown investigation or public scandal, The matter was dealt with behind closed doors. The US government concluded that while the connections were real, there was no proof of intentional aid to the enemy, aid d'armes after America had entered the war. In 1951, the seized assets were quietly unblocked and returned to their owners. The Union Banking Corporation was liquidated without any public outcry. The entire episode was buried in government archives, a footnote instead of a headline. The men involved, including Prescott Bush, emerged with their careers and reputations completely intact. It was a stunning display of how the system protects its own. The world had put soldiers and politicians on trial, but the bankers and the money walked free. With the legal loose ends tied up and the past safely buried, the stage was set for an astonishing act of historical rehabilitation. The Thyssen name, once synonymous with bankrolling Nazism, was about to be laundered. In post-war Germany, the family's industrial empire was broken up by the Allies, but only temporarily. With astonishing speed, the pieces were reassembled. By the 1950s, the Thyssen Group was once again a dominant force in German steel, a key engine of the country's economic miracle. The family diversified, investing in art, real estate, and global finance. Fritz's nephew, Baron Hans Heinrich Thyssen-Bornemisza, used the family fortune to build one of the world's most magnificent private art collections, which is now housed in a state museum in Madrid. The Thyssen name was no longer linked to war, but to culture, philanthropy, and modern engineering. Across the Atlantic, the American side of the story was also given a fresh coat of paint. Prescott Bush, his wartime business dealings a forgotten chapter, successfully ran for the US Senate in 1952, serving for over a decade and cementing his family's place at the pinnacle of American political life. The narrative was expertly rewritten. German industry was no longer the armorer of the Reich, but the engine of European recovery. The American financiers were not collaborators, but pillars of the establishment.